I'm trying to teach a different way that you don't have to do it like big gurus are teaching. You can definitely do it quietly and still be successful. There's no reason you can't be successful in a more quiet way.
Hello, and welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we'll air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. Today, our guest is Camilla Jeffs, the Introverted Investor. After years of doing real estate investments while also working a corporate job, Camilla learned to apply her introverted skills to open her own company, helping other introverts to find success as investors. A teacher at heart, this triathlete, outdoor enthusiast, CEO, and mother of 5 children shares her secrets to success in running a business, networking, and creating wealth as an introvert.
All right, I'm very excited today to have our guest, Camilla Jeffs. Camilla Jeffs is the Introverted Investor, and we're going to let her tell us about that. So welcome, Camilla.
Thanks, David. I'm so excited to be here.
It's very nice to have you. So you call yourself the Introverted Investor. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do and how you came to be the Introverted Investor.
Yeah, so I've been investing in real estate for almost 20 years now. And the first 15 of those years was just investing kind of on my own. It was me and my husband, and we would just go buy our own houses and fix them up, and then we'd rent them out, and we just acquired properties that way. And we just kind of did it. We didn't really talk to very many people about it. It was just all doing our own thing, using our own money, our own muscles, our own time. And then I decided it was time to scale and get into bigger things. And so I started investing in apartments. And apartments is a whole different game because it's investing with partners. You don't invest in apartments by yourself. It's a group investment. And that's when I started realizing that it was different. It was just very different to figure out partnerships and doing that. And then as I was learning more about real estate and investing, I was realizing that there's some really specific strategies out there that are perfect for introverts. And so I just wanted, as the introverted investor, I wanted to be able to educate other introverts on how they can be successful in real estate.
Yeah, very nice. And I always say there's not one right job for an introvert or extrovert, but you have to bring your strengths into whatever it is you're doing. So let's talk about that. So when did you figure out that you were an introvert?
Really when, at about the 15 years in, when I started going to networking events, so large real estate networking events, because I knew I needed to do that in order to partner with others and find some good partners. And I realized at those events that I was networking very differently than most of the people there. And most of the people there would just, group up, and they just bounce from group to group and, and enjoy conversing with hundreds of people. And I did not. And I did not enjoy conversing with hundreds of people. It just drained me. And it felt very odd for my personality to do that, and uncomfortable. And so what I started doing is I started looking for people who were sitting alone, right? And then I'd go sit by that person and I'd network with that person and get to know that person. And so I would have longer one-on-one conversations at these meetups and networking meetups. And at first I thought, well, maybe it's just because I'm scared, right? Or I'm shy or something. But then that's when I realized it's actually, no, it's because I'm more introverted. And as I started learning more about introversion and about the different aspects of it, there were many of them that I was like, oh yeah, check that box. Yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. That's me. But not all of them. Not every single characteristic of an introvert, is my personality, but many of them are.
Yeah. And our personalities are multifaceted for sure. I
Mhm.
I say that the biggest thing is that we tend to go inside our inner world of ideas more often than not. We all spend time thinking, we all spend time looking around outside of us, but an introvert spends more time in your inner world. And that's the key to success, is embracing it, like you're saying, that realizing, hey, this person might be bouncing around at this networking event and talking to as many people as they can, but that's draining to me, but it's also not effective for me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I would say another clue for me about introversion was that if I go on drives, I don't necessarily like listening to music most of the time. I mean, sometimes I'll put music on, but other times I just like to be in my thoughts. And I can sit there in silence and just be in my thoughts, or maybe I'll just listen to a podcast or something. But I find excess noise to be distracting, right? Because I like to be in my own thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And during the pandemic, I I've been working from home, and I realized how much I missed that drive to work and back. I don't miss the traffic. The traffic is terrible most days, but just like you're describing, being alone with my thoughts, and a lot of times, it was definitely a recharge time for me, especially after work. But a lot of times I had some great ideas. And I talk about
Mhm.
that sometimes too. It's like I had to figure out a way to capture those. So a lot of times I'd call myself hands free and leave myself a message, because I had the best ideas while I was all by myself on that drive. And that time that you spend alone is very important. It's definitely a need that we have. What are some other strengths that you've found that you've learned to embrace as an introvert?
One of those is writing over speaking. So I feel like that I can express myself much better as a writer than I can as in conversation or in speaking. So in my line of business, so part of my business, Steady Stream Investments, is online marketing, and you can do that in multiple ways. And one of those ways is writing, and one is video and speaking. And I find I have a really hard time with the video piece of it, because I don't have you don't have time to really think through and be careful about your language, right? So I love the writing piece of it, and I love to just write and educate via written things. And in fact, sometimes when I make videos, I have to write out a script, right? Because it just doesn't flow from my brain. The speaking part doesn't flow from my brain. But oddly enough, I actually enjoy speaking on stage, but I typically do have to memorize my entire speech so that I can go up there and deliver it. I don't, I can't just come up with something out of my head.
Hey, you're hitting some key points on success as an introvert. It's we think, we're deep thinkers. We need to think about things. And so writing often is a better approach for us, because we like to take the time, maybe to craft that email and spend some time thinking about what you want to say. And
Mhm.
I enjoy speaking too. And sometimes people think that's weird. And again, it's kind of some of the misunderstandings about introverts. But I don't necessarily memorize, but I really need to think and prepare about what I'm going to say, and have some really good ideas about that. And so, yeah, writing and preparation are definitely keys for us as introverts.
Yes, for sure.
Are there any myths that you've come across that you want to dispel?
Yeah, I mean, there's a common myth that introverts don't like people. And that's not true. Not true at all. Right? That we don't want friends or things like that. But I still enjoy human interaction very much. It's just, I just don't enjoy large groups, right? Like if we were to host a party at our home, I would prefer one or two families over, not 7 or 8, right? And so I think that's one of the myths about introverts, is that we just don't like people, or we don't like talking. That's not true either, right?
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's a silly one, isn't it? That we don't like people.
Hmm.
I think you said you had 5 kids, so
I
I think you
do,
probably
yes.
like people.
I do. I
Yeah,
very much
and
enjoy being with them.
yeah, and it's of course we like people, and I heard that during the pandemic too. It's like, oh, you introverts, you're just having a great time being all by yourself. I'm like, no, we all need
Yeah,
connection. It
yeah.
just looks different, like you said. You might not have 100 people over at your house, but you might have a couple families over, and again, there's not a right or wrong. It's what works for you and what you enjoy. But it is a really silly one that we hate people, because it's just not true. How we socialize may look a little different. Our needs might be different, but we still have definitely social needs for sure. Is there any
Yes,
other
yes.
myths that you want to dispel today?
I think that yeah, I think that's the main one that I was thinking about.
Okay. And in your work as an investor, what do you think are some of your strengths or even superpowers as an introvert that you bring to that?
Yeah, so one of the superpowers is the ability to listen. And because I'm not so busy talking about my business. And so my business is not about me, it's about my investors, and it's about investors and what passive investing can do to really change their lives, and the impact that they can create with that. And so that's really what, one of my superpowers is, along with the writing. I have the ability to really educate and really reach people in deeper ways rather than surface level. And I think that's one of my superpowers, is those abilities to reach them and to really listen and have good conversations with them.
Okay. And I'm sure there's plenty of introverts and extroverts in your line of work. What would you say, how would it look different for maybe an extrovert doing the same thing?
Yeah, so and extroverts, they like to talk a lot more, right? And they process by talking,
Right.
and introverts, we process by thinking. We go inward to process. Extroverts will go external to process. And so I think extroverts get tripped up sometimes when they are talking with investors, because in order for them to process what's happening, they have to talk. And so then the ratio of who's talking more kind of can get a little bit skewed, because it's important to really listen to the investor to understand their goals, instead of just completely going and talking, and saying, well, this is exactly how it is, and this is what you should do, and this is what you should not do, right? I feel like I'm more of a Yoda. I'm like a guide. I can guide people, instead of the Darth Vader that's forcing people to do it.
Yeah, I like that way of looking at it. And that's the thing. That's another really common or big difference between introverts and extroverts is they speak in order to think, while
Mhm.
we're putting all our thoughts together in a succinct way and just sharing that most important thought, while they're sharing a lot of things. And that's a big one to understand. And do you notice the difference when you're working with your customers, like the difference between introverted and extroverted customers?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There are differences in their approach and in the way they do it. And the introverts will ask really deep questions, and I appreciate that. And I love that. I love that about them, that they're thinking pretty critically about it. They want to fully understand the risks involved. And I think that, real estate investing is actually perfect method for introverts because you can go deep into the topics, and you can do a ton of research. Like I love to research. I could sit for hours and research something. And it's a really great way to do it. And as a if you come in as a passive investor, it's also fantastic because you can spend all the time researching and understanding and comparing, and you can pull up your spreadsheets if you want and do all your pros and cons lists and things like that. And then once you decide that, okay, yes, this is a good thing for me, you're the passive investor in this group where you are simply investing your money, but you don't have to put in your time. So you won't have to be the one that's out there, knocking doors and talking to all the people, and really doing all the extroverted work that comes with real estate investing, because there is a lot of work that is more extroverted in nature, that has to be done. So, but you can trust the other general partners to take care of that for you. So you don't have to be the landlord. You don't have to deal with tenants or toilets or termites or anything like that. You can simply do all the research and evaluation, invest your money, and feel good about, and then start participating in the returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're good researchers. And so
Yes.
that's definitely a strength. And then you also mentioned partnering. So, we have our gifts, and, as introverts, you and I probably have a lot in common, but if we were to really get to know each other, there's probably a lot of areas where we're different. And same with extroverted partners. We each have our own strengths. And so how might you partner with somebody else that maybe has some different strengths, where you can use your strengths, and there may be a different aspect of the business that somebody just truly is more gifted at, and again, we all have our own strengths. So how do you partner in the work that you do?
Yeah. Well, and in my business, we need each other, right? So introverts need extroverts, extroverts need introverts, because introverts tend to be very detail oriented and can really dive deep into topics. And introverts need extroverts to be the one out there. Like, so in my line of business, there's kind of four main partners. There's the acquisition specialist. So that's the person that's out there trying to find the deals. So they're out there cold calling brokers and owners, and as an introvert, I cannot cold call. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And because I don't have a relationship with that person, because I prefer deep relationships. But extroverts have no problem. They might be a little bit nervous about doing it at first, but then they get over it and they're able to do lots of cold calling. So I need someone like that in my business, and I have found someone like that. And then there is the underwriter, and the underwriter is like the financial analyst. And this is another perfect role for an introvert who loves spreadsheets, and they love to just dive into the spreadsheets and analyze things all day long, but they don't necessarily have to do the extroverted work of cold calling and finding the deal. Then there's the one who raises capital. So who's talks to investors and does that. Now this one's funny because people ask me, well, that's my specialty, right? Is talking to investors and helping them understand and be educated. And people say, well, that's like an extroverted activity. That's not an introvert activity. And I say, well, wait a minute. Let's think about this. It could be both, right? It could be both. So it could be an extroverted activity, someone who goes to lots of big meetups and talks to, 100 people at every meetup and gives out their card and collects them. That's one way to raise capital and to bring investors into deals. But the way I like to do it is the introverted way. And that's by, writing and providing some really great value and creating lots of content around it, and that sits out there on the internet. So I prefer to do mine from, the safety of my home and raise capital that way. And then you have the asset manager, and the asset manager is the one who's really dealing with all the property managers and any tenant issues that come up and things like that. And that one probably does require a little bit more extroversion than introversion, because as the problems come, you have to solve them pretty quickly.
Okay. And, I always say people can do any job. It's just, you said that in the role that you do in this work, you're doing it in your way, and that's the key.
Mhm.
And any of the positions that you mentioned, people could find the way to do it in an introverted way. Just they may lend themselves more towards someone that's an extrovert, but no matter what it is, and I think yours is a really good example. Somebody might think, well, the extrovert needs to do that. And no, I can bring my skills. This is something that I really enjoy, that I have a passion for, but I'm going to do it in my way, and bring my deep thinking skills and all the other things with it. So that's a really good example. So you told me that you recently quit your day job, right?
I did, yes.
So how is that for an introvert to be an entrepreneur full time?
Yeah, so as an entrepreneur, it's very different, right? So when I was working in my W-2, I was working in HR, and in HR, the nature of that job is there's lots of problems being thrown at you every other minute, and so it's very um, high stress. It's a high stress job, and I enjoyed it, and I did enjoy it. But my real estate business was just growing and growing on the side, and came to the point where I had to choose one or the other. And what I'm most passionate about is the real estate, is helping investors really understand what's available to them, and break out of only investing in the stock market, and really diversifying out of the stock market. So now I'm a full-time entrepreneur, and it was funny because right after or I think right before I left my job, I was feeling anxious about it, and so I ordered the book Quiet by Susan Cain,
Yeah,
and
that's a
I
good
and
one.
I read this one, and it was so great, and it really helped me in the transition, because I was trying to figure out, well, how could I do this as an introvert? How could I be successful? Because I think that's another myth I want to dispel, is that introverts cannot be a successful entrepreneurs. Because it's just simply not true. We just do it a different way than extroverts do it, right? We do it more quietly. But I loved the different strategies that she had in here, and so I'm trying to implement a bunch of those strategies into my life, right, and into my role as the entrepreneur. But I think really what I'm learning is that I can lead, and I can be a leader in my space, in my own way. And it's interesting because I will attract the people who are more like me. And I realized that there's actually a lot of real estate investors out there. And I even pulled like a Facebook group once and just said, hey, who out here is an introvert, and do you think you can be successful in what you're doing? And there's huge response. A lot of people are like, yes, I'm an introvert, and I'm just really struggling. I just don't know. I just don't see how I can get the best deals, or do all the things, because there's so much noise around in real estate. We have to go knock doors, or you have to like all this cold calling things. And so I'm trying to teach a different way, that you don't have to do it like big gurus are teaching. You can definitely do it quietly and still be successful. There's no reason you can't be successful in a more quiet way.
Okay. As an introvert, what parts of being a newly full-time entrepreneur work for you, and what might still be a struggle?
Yeah, so with the time management, right? So I was very careful about my time. I put together a whole spreadsheet of exactly what I was going to do every hour, because I knew that as soon as I left my W-2 and suddenly had all this white space on my calendar, that might be unsettling for me. And it was unsettling for me to not have people relying on me. And so the time management it helped a lot to have like certain blocks in my day. And then this is when I was going to be on, and here's when I was going to write. And this is the time that I was going to, be a creator and create content. That helped out a lot. And then, what are still the struggles? I mean, the struggles, it's probably always in my head, right? Is trying to feel a measure of success. I feel like I'm successful at the end of every day. And so one of the strategies that I did is I just started writing down what are all the things that I accomplished at that day, right? Because no longer do you have external people patting you on the head and saying, "Hey, you did a good job," right? You have to rely on your internal person to pat your own self on the head and cheer for yourself and say, "Hey, you did a good job today." And that's been very different and a learning for me.
Very nice. And yeah, I know there's lots of introverts out there that are thinking of doing the same thing, that are leaving their day job or their W-2. So that's really helpful. And it would be, I can imagine, I think, time management, as you mentioned, is different for the introvert. And, it'd be nice to have a little bit more control over that, and your recharge time and all that good stuff.
Yep.
So I did download the Introvert's Guide to Successful Real Estate Investing. And there's lots of, it has that introverts twist to it, like we're talking about. The introverts can be successful using their strengths. So do you want to speak more about that, how people can get that and contact you?
Yeah, so it's a guide, and the first part of the guide is just all about why being an introvert is actually a pro to being a real estate investor, right? Like why it's actually really great for you to be an introvert, because you're going to make really good decisions and very informed decisions, and because you'll spend the time really understanding. So it's all about, the reasons why introversion is actually great for investing in real estate. And then it goes on to describe my favorite strategies for an introvert that don't involve the cold calling and don't involve the things that would that you don't have to network with thousands of people and create this giant network of people. You can do it quietly, and you can do it with just a couple of specific strategies. So if you want to grab that, you can grab that from my website. It's just camillajeffs.com. And you can get a hold of that guide for real estate investing. And then also on camillajeffs.com, you feel free to contact me, and I'd be happy to talk because I like talking one-on-one with people, and getting to know their specific situation. And then I can kind of help guide you to a strategy that might be really good for you.
Very good. Right. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't cover today?
I just want to harp on the fact that as sometimes as introverts, we think that we can't be uber successful, right? That we can't achieve the highest of the highs. But I want to point out that there are people that have achieved that, and like Warren Buffett, for example, he's achieved it. Bill Gates, there are very famous introverts in our world that we can look up to. But also one other thing I wanted to talk about was, how introverts and extroverts need each other. So a famous example is Rosa Parks. So we know that Rosa Parks was the woman who refused to give up her seat on the bus. She did not do that loudly, right? She did not, stand up and make a fuss and yell and scream and do all of these things. She was a very quiet, reserved woman. But then she met up with Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King was an extrovert, right? He was just a gifted speaker, and he was the loud one, and Rosa was the quiet one. And the two of them, when they stood together, made a pretty amazing pair, and really changed changed our history. We're still trying to change the history, but they at least put us on the right trajectory, right? So I love that example of how introversion and extroversion just really complement each other and work together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great example. And of course, we can be very successful and very happy in what we do. The approach is just going to be different. And, we need to keep bringing these conversations that we have a different way of doing things. And it's not good or bad. It's not good or bad to be an introvert or extrovert. It comes to us very naturally. And if we embrace it, we can find that success. And so, thanks again for being on the show. This has been a great conversation.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to further connecting with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com. Check out the website, quietandstrong.com. I'll add social media channels for me and my guests to the show notes. Please comment on social media posts. Send me topics or guests you'd like to see on the show. There's so many great things about being an introvert, and so we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.